Okay, so good morning, students. We will continue with our unit number 2, which is system definition and structure and reliability assessment. So the first topic is value of information. So here in a value of information, a structure can be assessed that is identified how it is by collecting information about the exposure, vulnerability and robustness. I think we have done this in the last class, so sorry. I'll start unit 3 today. Just hold on for a second. So we'll start unit number 3, which is consequence assessment and engineering economics. So first one is consequence assessment. What does a consequence assessment means? It is a rigorous and methodical examination of the direct undesirable impacts of a loss of containment or material or energy. So this includes fires and explosions. So it consists of estimating impacts on people, the environment, and the process equipment. So types of consequence assessments there are three main types: logical consequence, contrived consequence, and natural consequence. So applications of consequence assessment are stated follows in 3 points. Design of new facilities, for instance, or for example, suggesting optimal separation distances between units in order to avoid domino effects. Risk assessment of a facility to provide input to a safety case, emergency planning and land use planning, and estimate impact distances for major accident scenarios. Next is the cause or the reasons for consequence analysis. So cause consequence analysis or cause consequence diagram, it is a method for illustrating the possible outcomes or results which have been arise from the logical combination of selected input. These inputs may be in events or states. So a combination of fault tree and event tree models. Cause consequence analysis CCA, it is an analytical technique. It is used in risk management for a better understanding of failures, and it is done by assessing the probability of failures of systems with a focus on their causes. So this is a figure for cause-consequence diagram wherein the causes of accident or limiting systems, that is the fault tree analysis, and also the causes, that is part of the fault tree analysis, results in critical event, and as a result the consequence part takes place, which is the identification of sequence. And this identification of sequence depends on accident limiting systems or event analysis. Cause consequence charts. So cause consequence charts are in essence yet another representation of combined fault trees and event trees, in the sense that the interrelation between the fault tree and the event tree, namely the top event for the fault tree, that is the initiating event for the event tree, it is represented by a rectangular gate with output event either being yes or no. So each of which will lead to different consequences. The benefit of the cause consequence chart being that the fault tree need not be expanded in the representation, and it enhances the overview of the risk analysis greatly. An example of a gate in a cause consequence chart, it is shown in figure 2. Gate in the cause consequence chart, that is event, if it is a yes, then the relevant result, which is considered as 1 minus p suffix I. And if it's a no, the second consequence result, which is only p suffix I. Microeconomic modeling. A microeconomic pricing model, it describes the prices for a goods in a particular market as a function of supply and demand. Microeconomic pricing models are basic renderings of an individual market showing how the quantity of a good increases as the demand, that is the price for the good, increases. So microeconomic pricing modeling illustrates how individual markets seeks out equilibrium. So this search for equilibrium in the price of a good and quantity, it is supplied as a theory, and it is a part of classical economics. So although it was not illustrated in terms of supply and demand curves with points of price equilibrium, Adam Smith's invisible hand was a narrative version of a microeconomic pricing model which shows how supply and demand in a particular market will guide completing participants to an equilibrium price. Next is how to understanding the price economic pricing model. So the most basic microeconomic pricing models, it has the price of a y-axis on the y-axis and quantity on the x-axis. So the supply line and the demand line then intersect in the middle of the graph, making a perfect X, that is combination with the equilibrium in the middle. So this type of microeconomic pricing model, it is an oversimplification, or of course the most models plot different price points. So by overlaying multiple demand curves along the supply line to illustrate how growing demand can move supply upwards in a market with estimate pricing points. Law of demand and supply. So the demand curve in microeconomic pricing model, it is determined by consumers by attempting to maximize their utility given their budget, and the supply curve is set by firms attempting to maximize the profits given the cost of production, the level of demand for the product. To maximize profits, pricing model is based around producing a quantity of goods at which total revenue minus total cost is at its greatest. So microeconomic pricing models can work well with individual markets because they simply illustrate how the market adjusts to supply and also to demand. So there can be a value in modeling a market in this way, however. So depending on the good and market being modeled, for example, the supply line may be quite steep and responsive to price increases. So this would suggest a rapidly growing market for a good compared to a shallow curve that may be expected in a more mature products market. Limitations of microeconomic pricing models. So microeconomic pricing models almost always come with a caveat. So this model focuses in on a single market and it attempts to capture the points of market equilibrium. But there are several compromises which are being made in the entire process. So while it is understood that a consumer weighs many different factors when deciding to purchase a good, microeconomic pricing modelings assume that when all other factors are equal, price is the determining factor. The issue is that there are many situations where all other factors are not equal and therefore the accuracy of a microeconomic pricing model also suffers. So moreover, microeconomic pricing models work best in markets with perfect or near perfect competition. This means the market in question has all the firms selling fungible goods and operating as price takers with low barriers to entry. Not many markets live up to this deal, so microeconomic pricing models are too idealistic in these cases. In general, the balance of power within the market determines who is more successful in settling prices. Where there is little competition or duopoly, for example, in aircraft manufacturing, Boeing Company and Airbus SE have the pricing power. So, monopoly markets or markets with heavy state influence will also co-found or correlate with many microeconomic pricing models. So if we are a free market advocate, microeconomic pricing model often shows the market for a particular good as it should rather be than as it is actually is. Next, human life value HLV. Human life value, it is the present value of all the future income that we could expect to earn for our family. So it is defined as the total income an individual is expected to earn until retirement. So it indicates the economic loss a family would suffer in case of early demise of the earning member. The human life approach, it is the method of calculating the amount of life insurance a family would need on the financial loss they would incur if the insured person in the family were to pass away today. So understanding human life approach. The human life approach is usually calculated by taking into account a number of factors which includes but not limited to insured individual's age, gender, planned retirement age, occupation, annual wage, employment benefits, as well as the personal and financial information of the spouse or the dependent children. Since the value of a human life is economic value only in its relation to other lives, such as a spouse or dependent children, this method is typically only used for families with working family members. The human life approach, it contrasts with the needs of approach. When using the human life approach, it is necessary to replace all the income that's lost when an employed family member dies. This figure includes after-tax pay and make adjustments for expenses like a second car incurred while earning that income. So it also considers the value of health insurance or other employee benefits. Next, the human life approach calculation. While determining the life insurance amount needed for a family, there are many important factors that needs to be considered. So it is very much imperative to spend the appropriate time assessing the many variables involved so that a family can ensure that it will be taken care of and will not be in any sort of financial distress if a family member passes away. So the following are the 5 key steps in calculating life insurance needs for a human life approach. Step 1, estimating the insured's remaining lifetime earnings, taking into consideration both the average and annual salary and potential future increases, which will have a significant impact on the life insurance requirements. Step 2 is to subtract a reasonable estimate of annual income taxes and living expenses spent on the insured. So this provides the actual salary needed to provide for family needs minus the presence of the insured. As a rule of thumb rule, this figure should be close to about 70% of pre-debt income, although this number may vary from family to family depending on individual budgets. Step 3, determining the length of time for which earnings will need to be replaced. This time period could be until the insured's dependents are fully grown and no longer require financial support or until the insured's assumed retirement age. Step 4, selecting a discount rate for future earnings. A conservative figure for this estimate would be the assumed rate of return on the US Treasury bills or notes. This is needed because a life insurance company will leave a death benefit in an interest-bearing account. Step 5, multiplying the net salary needed by the length of time needed to determine the future earnings. Then using the assumed rate of return, figure out the present value of future earnings. Example of human life approach. So considering a 40-year-old man that makes $65,000 per year, just hold on a minute. Okay, so sorry. So the example here that we have cited is a 40-year-old man that makes $65,000 per year. So after following the above 5 steps, it is determined that the family needs $48,500 per year in order to support itself. So if the 40-year-old individual passes away and must do so until what the retirement age of the individual would have been. In this case, 25 years away till 65. So assuming a 5% discount rate, the present value of this 40-year-old's future net salary over the past 25 years would be $68,556. Next is flood damages, that is the failure of dam structures. Failure mode, which has the most severe consequence for dam structure, is wall rupture, as this type of failure will release a flood wave, potentially resulting in severe damages and a large number of fatalities or injuries downstream of the dam structure. Typically, failures of dams are the result of extreme load conditions exceeding the resistance of the dam structure. Extreme load conditions may be caused by large floods, earthquakes, and failures of upstream dams. The resistance of the dam structure depends on the characteristics of the dam structure materials and the soil and rock properties. Such properties exhibit a certain inherent variability and may be influenced by external factors such as degradation process and pore pressures. Next, initiating events for dam failures, and it has been analyzed by Blind in the in the year 1983, and some results are illustrated below in figure, which is a distribution of initiating events for dam structures. Failure of the foundation, the causes is 36%, overtopping is 33%, cracks in dams is 7%, slides, that is banks or dam slows, causes failures of 5%, incorrect calculation causes failures in 1%, and unknown reason causes failures of 18%. So it is seen that most important initiating events may be attributed to overtopping and failure of foundation. So typically overtopping is the result of scar of the foundation due to extreme floods or malfunctions of the gates. So studies have shown that the predominant reasons for dam failures are human errors, and it's also seen from figure 4, which is based on data of Loss and Kenneth of 1987. From the figure, it is seen that various errors during the construction and the operation of dams constitute the predominant causes. Illustration of the distribution causes for dam failures by the same Loss and Kenneth of 1987. Where he cited the failure of foundations 36, overtopping 33, cracks in dam 7, slides 5%, incorrect calculations 1, and unknown reason is 18%. So you can give your attendance now in the chat box. Thank you.